Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Ah, young Midoriya. Glad to see you could make it. A booming voice rang out as a green-haired boy named Midoriya walked up to the edge of the forest, where his blonde muscular mentor All Might stood with a grin on his face. Hi All Might. What's going on? Why did you want us to skip the beach today? The boy asked as he tightened his bag around himself. The man laughed as he powered down into his skinny form. Ah, your training is very important of course, but after 3 months of non-stop work, your body will need at least a little rest. So I figured a nice little sightseeing trip could be a good bonding experience. All Might said as he turned and started to walk, gesturing to follow him. I haven't been here in a while, busy with work and all. Even I need a break every now and again, and this is where I come when such a moment strikes and I'm in town. Thought I'd share it with my favorite student. Oh, thank you All Might, that's really nice. The boy squeaked out, face going red at All Might's words. The coloring in his cheek died down a bit as his head perked up, noting the blonde's choice of words. Wait, favorite student? But I thought I was your only student? Oh, well yeah. You're my only student, so you're my favorite. The blonde said, laughing nervously. Don't get me wrong though, if I had more I'd have a bias towards you probably. That seems unfair to the other students though. The greenette muttered as he twiddled his thumbs. All Might laughed as he stopped near a clearing. Well, let's forget that for now. We're here, my boy. The blonde announced as he walked forward to a set of seats that had apparently already been set up, presumably by the pro. Both took a seat and the boy turned to his mentor when he started to talk again. So, how has the training been going at home? Sticking to the schedule? Yeah, of course. Midoriya said nervously, feeling slightly guilty. He had actually calculated to allow for more training, but somehow he felt like that wasn't what the man wanted to hear, so he didn't mention it. Glad to hear it, so how's life been despite that? And so the mentor and student continued to talk about their lives and the mundane, neither knowing of the even waiting for them later that day that would change everything. Red lights flashed. Screams were heard. Gunfire sounded. A soldier felt their body tense, the lights flash into darkness and back into the red glow. A towering figure stood at the end of the hallway. Another flash. The figure stood above them. The soldier last thoughts were of their family. How did he even find out about it? The project was supposed to be sworn to secrecy. It's him, anything's possible. What do we do? If he gets it, we're screwed. Are those scanners working? Yeah, why? Drop it. Drop it now. And that's why everyone started calling me the Fudge Doctor in my second year. All Might finished a story he was telling with a smile as Midoriya tried his best not to get lost in a fit of laughter. Oh God, so, these forests All Might. Midoriya began as he recomposed himself. You said you come here to relax? Is there anything other than this area? Well, there's a river over that way if you want to have a look. Following it down leads to this really pretty area with a lot of wildlife. The blonde said as he pointed off further into the forest. It's a bit far though. Tell you what, you walk on ahead a bit while I finish something here. Oh, okay. You won't be long? The boy asked as he packed a candy bar into his pocket. The older man gave him a smile as he waved him off. Just a minute or two, don't go too far though. If you can't see this clearing anymore, turn back and retrace your steps until you can see it again. Your mother would kill me if you got lost. The pro said as he pulled out his phone. See you in a moment, young man. See you. The greenette said as he turned and made his way into the forest. Most of the trees were thin and pretty sparse, not having many leaves at all. Midoriya knew it to be a side effect of an odd quirk from a pro hero who frequented this particular part of Mizurufu a few decades past. As the boy walked, he reflected on the training he had done so far with his mentor, the many hard days on the beach, some of which had ended with him collapsed on the ground once the man was out of sight. He flexed his arm idly as he looked at it. He felt like he should have been stronger than he was from the exercise he had done, yet at times it felt like he had regressed somehow. The gym had never been his thing, so he had no idea if that was normal or not. Sighing, he stuck one of his hands into his pocket to protect it from the slight nip of the cold. It was nice knowing, sometime soon he would finally have a quirk after so many years of being powerless. Still, a part of him did feel slightly bitter that everyone else was lucky enough to just be born with powers while he had to put his body through hell just to have a chance at having a power. He stopped at the top of a small cliff. Turning to check that the clearing was still in sight, a single thought ran through his head. Life is a jerk sometimes. Noting that he had walked too far, he sighed and started to make his way back when the floor beneath him crumbled and his eyes widened as he suddenly felt the world spinning as he fell. He felt his head bang against the grass. He groaned, dirt covering him. Yeah, like that. Pushing into the ground and lifting himself into a sitting position, he held his head as he let out a small hiss of pain. Shaking his head lightly, he cursed his luck and hugged his legs to himself. He'd walk back in a moment when his head didn't hurt as much. Looking down, he saw a few flecks of blood from something he must have cut open inside. He berated himself slightly for his negative thoughts as they turned to All Might and all the man had done for him over the past few months. I need to stop complaining and just get on with it. So one for all's hard to get, it's not like another option is going to fall out of the dash. Boom! His eyes widened as he looked up into the darkening sky, a bright light in between the dark barreling down. At first it seemed to be a shooting star, and then the light got bigger. And bigger. And then it got way too big and the boy could feel the heat picking up. He immediately jumped off to the side, barely avoiding the collision the apparent meteor made. Looking back, jaw open wide and eyes blinking slowly, he watched as the glow died down and saw the crater left behind. Then he finished his sentence. Sky. At this point, he was sure someone was messing with him. All Might. Can you hear me? You should get over here, please. The boy shouted as he carefully edged closer to the crash site, which glowed a soft orange. Upon closer inspection, he was surprised to see the mysterious object that had almost left him in pieces was actually something metallic and not a space rock. All Might. I'm over here. If you can hear me, you really should get over here. He took a step forward to get a closer look, misjudging his step and accidentally stepping over the hole of the crater and falling in. It didn't hurt nearly as much as his last two dives to the ground, but he was starting to notice a pattern with the day. Rising to his feet, he cautiously edged to the mysterious object, his natural curiosity piqued. He was in for a surprise when the object actually opened up, revealing it to be a storage for something inside. Is that a watch? The boy got closer to check and he was certain it was definitely a watch that had fallen out of the sky. Its face was in the shape of a square with rounded corners. The strap had a black trim on the outside, with the inside of the strap being a dark green. The watch face itself had two white bars that gave the illusion of an hourglass with the green color of the face, while the other side of the bars on the outer edges of the face were black. Midoriya didn't even notice the glow it was emitting had turned green. Weird, what the heck was this doing falling through the sky? The greenette wondered as he stuck his hand out over it. He wasn't intending to touch it, just to hover his hand over it and see if it was still warm. The watch had other ideas. Suddenly, without warning, the device flew up, out of its storage, and unraveled its strap before it lunged onto the quirkless boy's wrist. Ah! What the heck? Get off me, get off! The boy shouted as he started flailing his arm and prying at the device to no avail, ultimately slipping on his feet in his panic and ending up on the floor once more. He quickly got up and climbed out of the hole, looking for a way back to the clearing. The way he was fallen was too high up for him to climb back, and there was no obvious quick way around. Damn it! He stopped looking around as he let out a heavy sigh, looking down at the device on his wrist. bending down and picking up a stick in his line of sight. Why is he taking so long? He tried to pry the watch off, but its surface seemed to stick to him, refusing to budge. The boy gave up on the stick idea when the piece of wood suddenly snapped in half. Maybe there's a release button? Tapping around the edges of the watch, he probed for such a button. Eventually he had both his fingers over the left and right edges of the watch where there was no strap, as he could feel that they were loose and able to be pushed in. There, that should be the release, if this is like an actual watch at least. Pressing in the sides, the watch didn't let go of his wrist. However, something else did happen. The watch face popped up, revealing itself to be cylindrical in shape. In the middle of the green hourglass shape, parts of the lights turned off to make a black silhouette of a muscular-looking person with flat round feet and a tail, as well as a square head. What the heck? Okay, he was starting to feel like he was just repeating himself at this point. Shaking his head, he placed his hand over the face. He only intended to push it back in to turn it off. He probably should have realized that just because it was what made sense didn't mean the watch would actually turn off. As soon as the watch face clicked back inside, his body went numb for a moment before a bright green light exploded from the watch, making the boy's eyes go wide. Dash. The light engulfed him for just a moment before it dissipated, and where a green-haired and wide-eyed 5-foot-tall teenager once stood, there was now a hulking 12-foot-tall dinosaur-like creature with brown scales and green eyes, and the symbol of the watch the boy had on his wrist now was placed upon his chest. His voice was much deeper as well as he continued to scream. Aha! Looking down at himself, he saw he was now eye level with the top of most of the trees. Looking down at his hands, he saw there were now small claws at the end, and his palm was big enough to completely wrap around most people. He felt his new tail swish around behind him as he looked over his new body. What the hell is this watch? Turning around, his tail tore through one of the trees and he flinched as it was completely torn out of its place in the ground, falling over and causing a large thud. Oops. He turned to check the damage and in the process knocked over another 2 trees, causing him to twirl back around and once more destroy another tree. Half the forestry next to him was on the floor by the time he realized he should just stay put. Why is this happening? What even am I? I am here. A new booming voice announced, and the giant let out a sigh of relief as he turned to his mentor, who was in his muscular form, sunken eyes, and wide smile prominent. Oh good. All Might, he said as he took a step forward. At least now it can't get worse. What have you done with young Midoriya? The blonde demanded as he raised his fists into a fighting position to show he was serious. The boy's new mouth went dry. I just had to jinx it. Wait, All Might, it's not what it looks like. That was a bad choice of words, especially as the hero looked past him to where the boy knew the massive crater to be. The crater that he had fallen next to and banged his head on, where some of his blood was. And of course, because he was amazing, the man noticed. The smile disappeared off his face. All Midoriya could do was gulp as the man turned to him, and clearly was preparing to fight. Crap. Wait. The giant said as he took a step back, but either the man didn't hear him or was ignoring him as he pushed into the ground and shot forward. Detroit Smash. All Might bellowed, rocketing forward at speeds the titanic dinosaur could barely follow, only very barely putting his arms together into a cross to block him. He cringed as pain shot throughout his muscular arms, but to his surprise they actually stood up to the pro's punch, who seemed to be similarly shocked. Hey, what the dash? Would you listen for 2 seco WOAAAA hichich? He didn't get to finish his sentence as the blonde grabbed his arms and lifted him up, spinning him around at speeds that made the boy's head ache. I am MGONNNAA. All Might let go and the dinosaur-like boy groaned as he flew through multiple trees, rolling over onto his back. I'm pretty sure this isn't what bonding is supposed to be like. Gotcha. The familiar voice of his mentor shouted, and the boy shook his massive head. Alright, that's it. If he isn't going to listen willingly, then I need to make him. I can apologize later. You know, I think I finally get with some reports saying you get too emotional sometimes. The once green-haired boy muttered as he turned to face the incoming human missile of a man that was All Might. Watch your weak spot. The blonde seemed to slow down a bit in surprise at that, giving Midoriya the exact opportunity he needed as he slammed his massive fist into the blonde's stomach with his full force. The flesh underneath caved in more than it should have, and he could feel the flesh wrapping around his fist for a moment as the man cried out in pain. Oh, that felt wrong. The gargantuan teen shot forward, trying to grab All Might, but the muscular pro recovered from the surprise shot quick, flipping over the hand and leaping behind the dinosaur, getting him into a headlock. Ha, got you now, villain. What did you do to young Midoriya? It's emug, me you idiot. The boy chalked out as he scratched at the arm holding him. He was sure in almost any other situation he would dissolve into a fit of apologies and self-loathing at insulting his mentor. But when he had been turned randomly into a 12-foot dinosaur and beaten down by the man without a chance for explanation, his ordinary behavior wasn't particularly applicable. Midoriya? All Might asked incredulously as he let go of the boy's neck, causing him to flop onto the floor. The transformed boy groaned as he slowly pushed up and the blonde walked in front of him, hands still raised in defense but clearly having relaxed a little. Is that really you? Is this a trick? It's me. Elag, oh god, you really got a tight grip. I can prove it's me, because if it wasn't, how would I know about your weak spot? Or the fact you're burning down a time limit on your muscular form and you're actually really skinny most of the time? He said, and All Might's fists dropped as he reverted to his smaller form, mouth agape, and eyes wide. Okay, so it is you, but what happened? Is it a quirk? He asked as he took a seat on a log. The boy only just registered that he had been knocked back into the clearing the man had first taken him to earlier. Long story. If it is a quirk, it's a weird one. The boy said as he sat up. It started with that bang I thought you would have heard. And so Midoriya set to work, catching up the man to what had happened so far. The Omnimatrix. Now. You really think it will be that easy? Would you rather forfeit your life instead? A futile trade, as the watch will be mine regardless. You seem so confident. A clash. Blood splattered over a console. Gasps for air that wouldn't come. You bastard. You made a horrible mistake. Whoever you have given possession of the device will merely be another on my long list of conquers. And this one will be solely your fault. That is quite the story. All Might said as he sat on one side of a fire he had thrown together, Midoriya's gigantic form on the other. Do you have any idea how to turn back? None. The giant said as he shook his head and looked at the ground, many worried thoughts swirling in his head. I really hope there's something to do it though. I'd probably give my mom a heart attack if I came home like this. It will certainly be a shock for her when you tell her. The blonde admitted as he opened a water bottle and downed it, causing the once small teen to look up in surprise. When? Of course, even if we turn you back, if the watch refuses to come off by force, then a trip to the doctors will most certainly be in order. The man explained and the boy heaved out a sigh. Suddenly, to both their surprise, the symbol on the boy's chest suddenly started flashing between red and white as it made a loud beeping noise. Beep. 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 BWOO. A large red flash engulfed the area for just a moment, making All Might shield his eyes. When he looked back, the massive dinosaur was gone and in his place was Midoriya's normal body, eyes wide yet a slight smile gracing his features. Oh, thank God I'm back. I guess there's a timer or something. Midoriya cheered as he looked down at himself, though his smile quickly dissipated as his yes trailed along his arm to the watch that had returned to where it was before the transformation. Lifting his arm, he turned it towards the blonde to show him the device. This is the watch. It's pretty odd looking for a watch. The older of the two remarked as he examined it, taking the boy's arm into his hands to get a better look. So, I gotta ask, how did it feel? Weird. It was like I was in control, but it wasn't me. Like I was controlling someone else's body. The boy said, and the man just quirked an eyebrow. Well, okay, yeah, that's exactly what I did, but I meant it was like I was actually borrowing someone else's body, like their conscience was turned off to make way for mine. That's dark. The blonde said as he let go and started to pack up the stuff around them. Well, in any case, I think we should both prepare ourselves for what's to come. Huh? What? Is there something bad going to happen? The boy asked, confused, and the older man shook his head. No. It's just we have to explain everything to your mother. Everything. Okay, the watch and weird monster transformation thing I get. Obviously we need to explain that to my mom. Midoriya said quietly to his mentor as they climbed the stairs, keeping his voice low as he knew the walls in this building were fairly thin so it wasn't too hard to overhear people. But why do we have to explain your quirk or the training? I thought we had to keep that from as many people as possible. We do, but this is an extenuating circumstance. The blonde explained as they started to walk down the balcony leading to the Midoriya's apartment. Your mother has met me once before in my skinny form when you once passed out at the beach during our early training. I'm sure she'd start to question it if I randomly showed up with you again with this problem now. She'll realize we know each other either way and ask questions. You never have to necessarily lie about one for all, just only reveal so much of the truth. But here we need to reveal the whole truth? Precisely. Because we need to explain our relationship, how we know each other. I have some people who can maybe help with this whole watch situation, but you'd need appointments and I'm sure your mother would question it when they mention me. This could have a serious effect on your health as far as we know, and the one thing our secret should never get in the way of is someone's safety. The older of the two said as they stopped at the door. Midoriya sighed but nodded in understanding as his mentor bulked up into his muscular form. I wonder how much of his time limit he's wasted today on this. I should find a way to make up for it later. Let me do the talking then, my mom can be a little, well, like me. The boy said as he knocked on the door. A moment later a lock could be heard being unlocked and the door opened to reveal a plump woman with long green hair and kind smile. Welcome back, Izuku. You got home okay, Rig dash. She trailed off as she looked up and noticed the man standing beside him. Hey mom. You know All Might, right? I've talked about him before? He asked with a slight smile and the pale woman devolved into a mess of stuttering. All me. Of course she knew. Midoriya talked about the man non-stop, and after he met him it had ramped up even more. Still, the younger Midoriya could be a bit of a little shit when he wanted to, and getting to brag he had met his idol and become his pupil, yeah, even despite the situation he would gladly be a happy little git. Give her a minute. The green-eyed boy turned to say to his mentor who just quirked a brow at him. Walking in he placed a hand on his mother's back as he guided her to the living room, gesturing the massive blonde to come in with his other hand. Come on mom, you should go take a seat. There's something we all need to talk about. What is going on? Why is the number one hero in our apartment? You didn't do anything, did you, Izuku? I know how fanatic you can get. The woman asked as she tried her best not to hyperventilate. I can assure you your son hasn't done anything wrong. All Might cut in as the boy got up and quickly ran to the kitchen, pouring out a glass of water for the poor woman. What I'm here about is, hopefully nothing worth immediate panic. Hopefully. Inko asked with a frown, and the blonde almost slapped himself as Midoriya placed the glass of water into his mother's hand as he placed an arm around her in half hug. This is what I meant. The boy said with a glance to All Might. He just rubbed his neck. I don't want to downplay your worry mom, but we're kind of on a time limit, so do you think you can stay calm enough for us to explain? I can try, I think. She said as she looked between the two, and oh god, All Might was in her house. Why was he in her house, I think? Well, better than nothing. If we are going to do this, we had better do it properly. I am All Might, as you know, but that is not all I have to introduce myself as. The man said as he stood, giving a light bow as some steam started to trail off him. A moment later he shrunk down into his regular form as Midoriya held his mother so she wouldn't collapse. I also have to introduce myself as Yagi Toshinori, the man behind the persona of All Might. There's a lot we have to discuss, Miss Midoriya. What? How, but, what? Aren't you supposed to be, well, huge? She asked as she looked at him and to her son. I am. Or at least I was, until a few years back. I have told your son this story and now I must tell you. He said as sat back down and prepared himself. So he began. He explained first how he had gotten into a fight in the past that had destroyed his organs. At the younger Midoriya's request he had spared her the sight of the injury that had been left behind and only told her of the consequences. He told her of his time limit and how it affected his hero work. And finally he got to the part he dreaded the most, not his quirk but his actions when he had first met his pupil. On that day, when I met your son. He was so passionate and like you predicted, his passion led to him making some interesting decisions. Toshinori explained as he tightened his grip on his knee, preparing himself. This led to your son to discovering about my time limit. I explained to him what I have to you. And, your son asked me if he could be a hero. Inko tensed in Midoriya's side, knowing she could already guess where it was going as the man's tone hadn't been one that had instilled confidence. What did you say? Before I continue, it doesn't excuse it or change the fact it happened, but I want to explain that I was not in a good frame of mind at the time. I was disillusioned with the world of heroics in general at the time if I'm honest, and then your son, at the time to me some random teenage I didn't know found out one of my biggest secrets. I was hardly thinking positively. You told him he couldn't. She said and seemed to choke on the sentence as she placed a hand on her son's knee. You told him he couldn't achieve his dream. Yes. And while no amount of apologies will ever make up for it, I want to say I am truly sorry. I do not exaggerate when I call it one of the biggest failings in my whole life. The blonde heaved out a heavy sigh before looking up at the woman, whose own head was hung, hiding her eyes as her body seemed to tremble. Looking closer he could see the slightest hint of a tear rolling down her cheek and he frowned. Of course, your son truly deserves credit for proving everyone who, even after such an event, still did what no one else could. The woman lifted her head and tilted it to the side, surprised and confused. Midoriya wore a small smile as he recalled the events. What do you mean? After our encounter, we had ended up at the same area. A villain attack occurred that was hellish for the pros to say the least. I was there, but as my time limit had passed, I didn't join in the fray initially. The blonde said as he looked between the mother and son. You might know of this attack from what I've heard. It was a villain made of pure slime, who had taken hostage a blonde boy. Katsuki Bakugu. The woman's hand shot to her mouth as her eyes went wide. Removing her hands a moment later as she looked between her son and the man. Bakugu? Mitsuki's son? Yeah. Midoriya said as he started rubbing circles into his mother's back. It wasn't a pleasant situation, in the slightest. None of the pros around at the time had the ability to handle such a villain. It was starting to seem hopeless. Bakugo, you said his name was? He was struggling to breathe and none of the pros were making any moves. I was berating myself yet never moved to do anything. Another regret I hold. One that could have been much worse if the real hero of that incident hadn't shown up. Wait, you don't mean? Yes, I do. In a situation that was causing even pro heroes to freeze up and hesitate, all your son saw was someone who needed help as soon as possible. He leapt into action, and I understand that your motherly instincts might make the thought nerve-wracking, but your son acted like a hero. He explained, and the mother immediately pulled her son into a proper son at that. Oh, Izuku. She muttered as she held him tight and he moved to hug her back. It only lasted for a moment, which the blonde didn't intrude upon, and once it was over he immediately jumped back into it. Your son's actions were enough to inspire me to act. He ultimately couldn't get the boy out of the slime, but his efforts were so valiant and actually put up a better fight against the slime even without his powers than I saw some of the other heroes do. I took out the slime villain, and once I got the paparazzi off me I went to talk to you, son. To apologize and to tell him something else. Something I tell almost no one, that I asked him to tell no one. And now I'm going to tell it to you. Huh? But, why? Because, it's important for everyone in this room. While I regret my words, my point does stand about you. Which young Midoriya wishes to attend. It's incredibly difficult to get in without a power. After what he did, and how he inspired me to act, reminded me of the virtues I am supposed to embody as the world's symbol of peace, I would be lying if I said a part of me didn't feel indebted to your son. All Might said, and Inko sat back slowly as her eyes went blank, having no idea how to respond to such a statement. When I explained as much to young Midoriya, I promised myself to help him. I told him what I should have when we first met. He can become a hero. Out the corner of his eye, the blonde noticed that a few tears seemed to spring into his student's eyes as well, and he did his best not to roll his own. The boy could bring water to an entire country if just watched a single sad movie. And then I told him what I need to tell you. I told him the truth. The truth behind my powers, about my quirk, one for all. One for all? The woman asked as she looked up to the man with confused eyes. My quirk. The one I hope for your son to inherit. Thud. MOMINKO. The green-haired woman had collapsed onto the floor at that final exclamation. Quickly picking her up and setting her back onto the couch, Midoriya sighed. She actually lasted longer than I expected. If we give her a moan dash. Inherit? The woman suddenly shot back to consciousness and caused the two to jump in surprise. Huh, faster than I thought. Midoriya quietly commented. What do you mean inherited? Is that even possible? The woman asked, and All Might sighed as he sat down. Yes, it is. And so the blonde explained his power, how it was passed on through generations, always getting stronger. How he wanted to give it to Midoriya once the boy was ready. That's amazing. The woman muttered quietly as she looked between them. But, why? Why keep it so secret? That's because of me, I'm afraid, otherwise I'm sure young Midoriya would have told you already. Its existence has to be kept as secret as possible, due to the unique nature of it. Could you imagine what would happen if it was revealed I could pass my powers on to the public? People would be clamoring to be next in line, regardless of whether they fit what I intended for the power. It's kept as secret as possible for the safety of the user, to avoid even an accidental slip. But recent events have rendered this secret to need to be revealed to you. Recent events? The woman questioned with a nervous tone, and Midoriya stood up as he showed her his wrist with the watch on it. I know All Might showing up distracted you a lot, but I'm still kind of surprised you didn't notice this. Midoriya said as the woman edged closer to look at it. A watch? I don't understand. Unfortunately, that's preaching to the choir. All Might said as he rubbed his neck. Everything I have told you so far happened 3 months ago. Since then, I'm sure you have noticed your son has been training a lot more. He has been preparing his body for the sheer power of my quirk. He has been doing really well, so we were taking a break today so he could recover. Unfortunately, as it turns out, something happened, and we didn't really get the chance to actually relax. The blonde went on to explain the events of the day, and Midoriya provided his side every now and then as the woman listened silently. Eventually they wrapped up the story with All Might apologizing profusely for punching her son in the face. And that's all that has happened so far. We immediately came back here to explain this all to you. Hang on, wait. Inko held her hands out as she shook her head, a confused frown on her features. So you're basically saying a watch fell from outer space, got stuck on my son's wrist and turned him into some sentient monster dinosaur? Basically, yeah. The blonde said, and Midoriya idly traced a finger over the watch without realizing. This entire visit is really starting to hurt my head. The woman said quietly as she massaged the bridge of her nose. Yes, I understand that. So, seeing as the watch refuses to leave your son's arm and it's apparently got such a powerful feature hidden in it, part of why I came back was to help you with getting the right people. All Might explained as he wrote down some names in a notebook he had took with him, ripping out the page and giving it to the woman. Tomorrow, you should call these numbers and set up some appointments for your son. I'll talk with them today so they understand the urgency. As for now, young Midoriya, you should really rest. Transformation quirks always take a lot out of those who use them. I wouldn't be surprised if this was similar. Yeah, alright. I was actually feeling pretty tired. I'm going to head to my room if you both don't mind? The boy asked as he gestured to the hallway. Both quickly ushered the boy off. By all might, love you, Mom. Sorry I kept this all a secret for so long. I understand. Good night, sweetie, sleep well. Good night, young Midoriya. I know what you can be like, don't fret over your training. Rest for now, you'll need it. All Might said, and the boy nodded as he left to his room. Well, thank you for listening. I truly, deeply apologize for everything I have had your son keep from you and what I have done in the past. I forgive you. Actually. The woman looked down at her feet as the two made their way to the front door. I can't deny I'm upset that you crushed my son's dreams, however briefly, but I am just as guilty. I have said things I regret as I didn't think them through. Clearly, from everything you've told me though, you're making up for it and you've given him a chance to achieve his dreams, something I could never do so. Thank you. And thank you for helping with this watch as well. Of course. Well, I will see you again at the appointments most likely. I'll see you there. The man said as he walked out the door. Goodbye, Miss Inko. Oh, just Inko is fine, All Might. The woman said as she brushed a loose lock of hair behind her ear. Then please just call me Toshinori, especially when I'm like this. The man said as gave a small wave goodbye, turning and walking away. The door closed and the man heaved a sigh. I fight villains on a daily basis, and yet somehow that was more scary than most of them. As he walked off, his thoughts turned to the watch on his successor's wrist. At least now, we can figure it out and hopefully nothing worse will come of it. High in the sky floated two spaceships, one mangled and destroyed beyond repair, the other merely floating there. Inside, a towering figure stood among a mass of robotic workers. Should we send a probe, sir? Give it a few Earth hours. If we can know more about who may be in possession of the Omnitrix, we can recover it easier. Knock, knock, knock. Izuku, it's me. Not that, it would be anyone else, I suppose. Inko's voice trailed off through the green-haired teen's door. He sighed with a slight smile as he shook his head. Come in. The boy said as he cleared up some room on his bed so his mom could sit down if she needed to. When she walked in, she was fidgeting and Midoriya could only quirk an eyebrow at that. Something the matter? No, it's just... Taking a deep breath, the woman sat down on the spot the teen had cleared for her and turned to face him. About this whole All Might situation. The boy tensed. I'm not going to pretend I'm not upset that you didn't tell me, she said, and the boy flinched. Not good. But I get why, and I just wanted to make sure you know I already forgive you for it, okay? Mom. The boy muttered, not sure how to respond before opting to just take the woman into a hug, which she gladly returned. I love you. I love you too, sweetie. Inko replied as she wrapped her arms around him tight. They stayed like that for a moment before the older of the two pulled away with a serious look. And so you know, I just got off the phone with the doctors. Oh, Toshinori called ahead like he said, they managed to book a 3-hour appointment. Oh. That's good then. The greenette said as his eyes trailed down to the watch. Somehow it hadn't actually been that uncomfortable to sleep with. Let me guess, until then no transformations? Not that I was particularly planning to anyways. More or less. Inko confirmed, but then her face perked up into a smile. Thought the doctor didn't seem that concerned, to tell the truth. He said it was more likely to be like a long quirk assessment than anything else. Wait, quirk assessment? Midoriya questioned as he tilted his head in confusion. Well, yeah. So long as you can turn back, the doctor said that while you shouldn't transform, if you do, just treat it like it's a quirk. His mother beamed and the boy's brain shut down. A quirk? I have a substitute for a quirk on my wrist and I probably have to take it off soon? Of course. Izuku? Yeah. Sorry, just processing that. The boy said as he shook his head. So no transformations, at least until tomorrow. Well, actually, the doctor said one. The plump woman said as she scratched her head and Midoriya looked up in surprise. He said that you should figure out how the watch works first, but to only use the one you already turned into so we know you'll turn back. I'm a little worried about it, but it was the doctor's orders, so... So, I guess we're going to the park then? Midoriya asked and the woman nodded. Can we do it now then? 'Cause I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious. Of course you are. Inko muttered with a small but affectionate roll of her eyes. Just let me get my coat, it's cold outside. Wind blew past as the two Midoriyas stood alone in the park. The weather had kept most people inside and away from any recreational activities outside, so they had the place to themselves, the only exception being two young kids playing in a green sand pit a fair bit away from them, which suited the younger of the two just fine. The park had always been one of the few places where quirk use was basically completely allowed, but some pros would occasionally come past without knowing that, and it would always lead to a nightmare trying to explain that fact. Ready? The teen asked his mother, who gave him a thumbs up, for her face betrayed her nervousness. Turning back to face the watch, he pressed in the sides and the face popped up like before, once more displaying the silhouette of the dinosaur. Okay, so that's how I get it open then, good to know. It was when I pressed it down it transformed, so what if instead I... His hand cupped around the side of the face that had popped up and twisted. It gave no resistance and the top flashed green for a moment before displaying a new silhouette. Turning once more, it flashed yet again and another new form popped up. Including the dinosaur-like creature he had turned into, there were 10 in total, most of which looked humanoid but with distinct features. One's head was seemingly ablaze, another had moth-like wings, and one's body seemed to be dissolving. What are these guys? Finally he scrolled back around to the first one he had transformed into and looked down at the watch for a moment, hesitating on the transformation. Better prepare myself mentally for it this time. He took a few deep breaths, which he let out slowly before placing his hand into the sky, preparing to slam it down. It wasn't necessary, but hanging out with All Might for so long had given him his own knack for theatrics. A green flash engulfed the boy as his body went numb once more. When it dissipated, he looked down in surprise. This isn't who I was supposed to turn into. Omnitrix, located Mizutofu, Japan, Asia, Earth. Attached to Izuku Midoriya, Homo sapien, male, no impressive attributes, threat level equals low. A child? Yes, sir. This will be even easier than I thought. Send the probe. What, are you? Inko questioned worriedly as she inspected her son. Instead of turning into a giant 12-foot dinosaur, he had turned into a creature who seemed to have a similar dinosaur-like theme, though one more akin to a velociraptor, whereas the first could be seen more like, well, an amalgam of massive dinosaurs really. I don't know. Midoriya said, his voice now raspy. Unlike the form before that wore no clothes, this one wore an odd aqua-colored jumpsuit, with a black area covering his chest. On top of the black was the watch's symbol. He had a tail with stripes, some parts the same aqua of the jumpsuit while others were a more normal blue. Wait, are my feet balls? I think so. Inko said as she looked down to her son's thin legs. No longer did he have feet or hands, his hands being replaced by 3 sharp claws that held themselves together in a cone shape when relaxed, and his feet were replaced by 2 black balls that the boy swore he could feel little tiny nips of electricity shooting through and onto the ground. Feeling his head, he realized he was wearing some kind of metal helmet with a similar color to his clothes. This isn't the one from the forest? No, I mean that one was massive. This guy is, whoa. The boy suddenly shot his head back as if he'd been punched before looking left and right so fast that his mother was worried he'd give himself whiplash. Fast. Nippy, agile. So many words shot through my brain there. He can think so fast, it almost hurts to keep up. I can recall everything that happened yesterday seconds. This is a fasted sensation, I mean I can't think you penilas since it's amazing but dash. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Slow down, Izuku. I can't understand you at that speed. The woman said as she looked over her son worriedly. What are we going to do now? We were told specifically not to let you transform into anything else. Well, the blue dinosaur-like boy looked around the park they were in and just shrugged. It's not like there's any helping it at this point. The best we can do is hope the timer applies to every transformation and see what this guy can do in the meantime. Because I know one thing, he is fast. But how fast? Oh, good question. Wait, Izu-Inko couldn't finish her sentence as the boy was suddenly gone in a blur of blue and black. Looking around, she saw her son at the other end of the park looking at his hands. Cool. Okay, that's faster than I thought. The boy said, and the woman noticed the helmet had closed. Whereas before it had shown the face of the boy, with green eyes and black lips, it was now closed, showing an odd blue visor. Whoosh! Just a second later he was back into place and Inko's mouth dropped wide open. Hearing about the transformations was one thing, seeing it was completely different. Wah! I can figure out if move faster or think faster. The world feels like it's going so slow right now. Midoriya exclaimed as he looked around. Shame all we got is this park. Oh. I wonder how many laps I could do in a minute, gotta pass the time somehow. What do you dash? Izuku. Breathe for a moment. The woman shouted as she massaged her head. This is a serious problem, you know. Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry mom, I got excited is all. The boy said as he finally stayed still and the woman sighed. Of course you are, sweetie, just give me a moment to catch up please. She said as she rummaged into her bag. A moment later she pulled out her phone and opened its notepad application. So, you're fast, really fast. We should probably write this down for tomorrow. Yeah. Don't forget things fast. The speedster said as he looked around. His head had so many thoughts passing through that even his normal brainstorms paled in comparison. He felt bad for anyone he started mumbling around like this. Bit sore, but I think that's just because I'm not used to it. I can feel my fingers, claws buzzing as well. I think they can move just as fast if I wanted. Okay then. The greenette said as she took a seat and typed down the notes into her phone. So nothing bad other than the head? Nope. Nothing bad at all. The boy said happily. Boom. I really need to learn to keep my mouth shut. He muttered as he hunched forward before looking around to see a massive red robot with 4 legs and claw-like hands as big as his last transformation had been stomping towards the kids who had been playing in the sand. Now, however, they were huddled together as the robot stomped towards them with killing intent. Looking around, the teen felt his blood go cold as he realized that no heroes or anyone were around. The only people present were him and his mother. Stump. BZZT. A light turned on upon the robot's arm, a laser preparing to fire. One of the kids screamed and it caused Midoriya's mind to shut down as his instincts took over. Whoosh. Boom. The sandbox the kids had been playing in exploded, but the children were no longer inside. Inko barely had time to blink before all of a sudden her son stood before her with both of them in his hand. It's okay. I've got you. Here, my mom will get you to some pros, right mom? MOM. He exclaimed and felt slightly guilty, but they hardly had time for being confused now. Alright, we'll get you to the safety. But what are we going to do about that thing following us? We can't lead it to more people. Inko said as she took the 2 kids into her hands, who gladly held on. She looked up and even through the visor her son's transformed eyes hid behind, she could see what he was thinking. Izuku no. You are not fighting that thing. Boom. It was getting closer, they didn't have the time to argue. Not the time, Mom. If you can get a hero then I won't have to, but you have to go now. He shouted and she still hesitated. The 2 kids clearly got more scared. BZZT. Another laser being prepared. MOM, go. I can handle myself for a few minutes. He almost screamed, more out of fear than anything, and she finally got the message, turning and running with the kids in hand, though the look on her face showed just how unconformable she was with doing it. "Be careful, I'll get a pro as soon as possible," she shouted as she ran, and the boy turned and just barely sidestepped out the way of the new laser. "So what's a robot doing attacking some kids?" Midoriya asked, trying not to think about the fact he was operating on an unknown time limit. "Malfunction, or did a villain program you?" Omnitrix located. Primary objective, retrieve Omnitrix. BZZT. Omnitrix? The speedster asked as he avoided the laser, which created another loud boom. A second later he was behind the robot, who amazingly managed to keep track of him and swirled its head around. "What's an Omnitrix?" Secondary objective, eradicate Izuku Midoriya. "Oh, wait, what?" The boy froze up and a laser fired off that he failed to react to in his surprise. He felt the ground disappear from under him as he flew backwards before rolling across the ground. Rising to his feet, he shook his head as he watched the behemoth stomp towards him. "How do you even know me?" "Wait, is the watch the Omnitrix?" Affirmative. BZZT. Whoosh, boom. Crap. The actual fight was proving amazingly repetitive as the speedster was far too fast for the robot to stand a chance of hitting him. It would just continually fire lasers he would dodge, in the teen's mind, though his thoughts were running a million miles a minute, and not just because of his new form. "What do I do? What do I do? At least the kids are safe now. He wants me and the watch, but why is he trying to kill me for it? Does this robot belong to the person who made it? Can't say I'm keen to give it back if so, but why would brute force be needed? Maybe something else? Oh, forget it, that doesn't matter right now. How are you going to win? Figure that out." The robot finally stopped firing lasers as a burst of fire shot out its back, propelling it forward, and it tried to smash the blue blur with its claws. Midoriya jumped out the way in time, feet landing on the armor of the claw, which he used as a ramp to zip into the air and over the robot, flipping around in the air and putting some distance between the two as he landed back in the park where he started, giving him some time to think uninterrupted. "I can't fight this guy head on. I'm lucky enough to be in a park where quirk use is allowed at all, but this won't go down as well if I destroy him. Sure, self-defense, but it rarely gets presented in that light. If I hit him head on, I'm technically breaking the law. If I hit him head on, hit. So long as I don't hit him, I'm good, so I just need to find a way to beat him without touching him. Easier said than done, but..." BZZT. Whoosh. Boom. He was behind the behemoth once more, and now he knew how to win. "All right, big guy. I can't hurt you, but gravity can," he shouted as he dodged another incoming claw, but instead of sidestepping or just moving to the back of the robot, he continued to run without stopping, circling the robot and picking up speed. The robot started to smash its claws into random places into the ground and firing lasers off, but the boy's new reflexes made them almost too easy to dodge. Mentally, he tried to keep count of how fast he was going, though he had no way to know if he was accurate. 30 miles per hour, 40, 50, 55, 60, 75, 80, 95, that should be 100. He started to maintain his speed instead of accelerating, still dodging all the obstacles the robot tried to throw at him. A part of him was surprised he could even go this fast, but he wasn't complaining, as he felt the wind he was generating pick up. He continued to circle, and even from his viewpoint he could see the blur trail he left rising into the air, forming a tornado. One more rotation and then... The speedster left his path, once more stood in the park and looking at his handiwork with a smile. The robot lifted off the ground and started flail, seemingly unsure of how to react. He quickly rose higher and higher into the air until he was definitely way too high to survive. Gravity can take over now. And sure enough, it did. A whistling noise could be heard as the hunk of metal suddenly plummeted before it collided into the ground with a harsh thud that was strong enough to make the teen cringe. Pieces of metal flew everywhere before. Boom. Yeah, I think my work here is done. I better go home quickly, don't want to run into any pros other this. Whoosh. To the boy's surprise, he quickly picked up the speed he already had faster than before. He zipped past people and cars at speeds so fast he was sure he probably wasn't even being seen, which suited him just fine. The boy started keeping a count in his head. 6, 7, 8. And he was home, in his room. 10 seconds. I traveled around the entire block in 10 seconds, holy crap. Beep. 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 BWOO. Looking down at his human form, he smiled slightly in surprise. Well, that's a new favorite, not that there's much to work with. Secondary objective, eradicate Izuku Midoriya. Retrieve the Omnitrix. The greenette's smile quickly disappeared and he rummaged inside his pocket, pulling out his phone and quickly pulling up his contacts. All Might. We need to talk ASAP. If you can please come to my house immediately. 1845. After he sent that text, he quickly found his mother's contact and called her. Ring. 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 Izuku? The worried voice of his mother came through far too loud and he clutched his head as he held the phone away from him. Al. Yes, it's me, you don't need to shout. I'm perfectly fine before you ask, nothing happened to me. Oh, thank God. Where are you? I managed to find a pro, but by the time we got here the robot was completely destroyed. Was that you? Yeah, it was me. Look, I'm back home, didn't want to run into any pros and have to explain that. I just got in touch with All Might and asked him to come over as well. Please come back and I'll explain what happened. Okay, I'll see you soon. You're definitely safe? Izuku. Yeah, sorry. I don't like this. All Might said as he sat in the waiting area outside the doctor's, magazine in his hand as Inko fidgeted nervously next to him as she continued to be the nervous wreck she had been for the past 20 hours. Why did you start reading Grandma's knitting techniques weekly then? Midoriya asked with a quirked brow from his spot across from the two, hand idly running over the top of the watch. No, not the magazine. It's actually quite interesting. I meant what's happening with this watch. The blonde explained as he set the issue down on the table beside him. Sorry I couldn't get there yesterday, by the way. It's fine, your time limit was up and you were in another city, it couldn't be helped. Midoriya said as he waved his hand quite the same as how he waved away the issue. But yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Worrying, that's how. Inko said, her tone clipped before she shook her head with a frown. Sorry, I'm just really worried about you, sweetie. I hope they have a way to take it off so whoever wants you will leave you alone. Yes, I think we can all agree that would be for the best. The skinny pro said as he readjusted his place in his seat. The matter of finding a way to get it off though is something else. I don't think it matters. Midoriya muttered, getting the two adults' attention. He looked up and sighed when he saw their questioning glances. Let's say we get it off, there's no guarantee that will definitely make me safe. For all we know they could still want to kill me once this thing is off, and then whoever it's given to next, and we know nothing about them yet to stop them. I don't doubt you could stop them, All Might, if you had it, but you couldn't protect it 24/7, and I'm sorry but I am not taking it off if it has any chance of falling into whoever attacked me hands. This thing made me, a quirkless kid with no experience, able to take on a killer drone. Could you imagine what it could do for? A serious villain? Not to mention all the things the other forms might be capable of that we don't even know yet. It would certainly not be pretty. All Might admitted with a sigh. His sunken eyes then narrowed as he looked at his successor. This defense of keeping it on wouldn't happen to have a certain ulterior motive though, would it? Well, of course for me it's a bonus. Maybe that is a little selfish, but I admit it, not having any powers then suddenly having a way to be normal and being told I have to give it up, it's frustrating. The greenette sighed and Inko stayed strangely quietly at that. The blonde at least had to commend his student for being honest about part of his reasoning, and regardless he did make a good point about what would happen once it was off. For all we know this conversation doesn't even matter, it's not coming off by normal physical means and I doubt we're just going to stumble across a manual for it. Yes, that's something else that's been concerning me, and it seems as time passes my concern only grows. the hero said as rummaged through his pocket before taking out his phone. With such an odd and powerful contraption and no idea how to work it, I reached out to a few contacts to see if anyone had any idea what the watch was. Now it's only been a day, so I didn't expect them to find it by now, but there's something they all say which is starting to make me think we may not get any answers. As he said that, he pulled out his phone and tapped something on the screen before holding it out for both the Midoriyas to hear. So far there has been nothing we could find on any transformation watch. It's unlikely we will. Many here don't believe such a thing to be possible, at least not with the technology we have. I'm afraid we've yet to find anyone with knowledge of such a watch. The chances of finding such technology is next to zero. It shouldn't be possible. A few other similar messages played, but they all repeated the same thing: the watch shouldn't be able to work at all. But it's right here on my wrist, so it has to be possible. Midoriya exclaimed as he shook his watch wrist for emphasis. Toshinori shook his head lightly as he leaned back and placed his hands over his stomach. Well, I have one theory, but you may think me a lunatic for suggesting it. I'm a quirkless kid who turned into a 12-foot dinosaur because of a watch and fought the world's #1 hero right after because of a misunderstanding. Weird may as well be the name of the game. Midoriya said as he scratched his head. Despite his encouragement, he still wasn't prepared for the answer he got. Aliens. Inko froze and Izuku just blinked in surprise. Aliens. Told you it was a lunatic theory. Actually no, the watch did fall out of the sky like a meteor, and if it doesn't match up to any known technology on Earth but does exist, then it has to match up to some kind of technology somewhere. Midoriya started to mutter as he placed a finger to his chin. Not to mention, I have never seen anything like the things I transformed into. It wouldn't be stretched to consider that if aliens do exist, some would take a similar evolutionary path as Earth if they were in similar conditions and I turned into dinosaur-like creatures. Dinosaurs came before us, so it might be possible. Wait, are we seriously considering this? Inko asked as she looked between the two with a look of disbelief. Apparently so. All Might said, similarly surprised his idea had actually gained traction. Well, it's better than nothing. Midoriya pointed out. Looking down at the device on his wrist, he let out a small smile. And it's less of a mouthful to say I can turn into 10 aliens, than into 10 different transformations. Well, that's certainly true. All Might smirked before it dissipated and he turned to face Inko. Of course, if we really can't take the watch of him, whether it be by his refusal or because there is no way to, then I better offer this now. If you want, I could get in contact with some people to have a few pros constantly stationed near your house for your safety if you want. Before the woman could give her answer, the door opened and out walked a black-haired man with blue eyes and a white coat, who had a clipboard in hand. We're ready now, please come in. I'm Dr. Tsuruki Izumi, I'll be working with you today. The three stood up and followed the doctor into the room he had come out of, which proved to be quite spacious with an operating bed, sitting area, and various odds and ends scattered about. You must be the one All Might was telling me about. And you must be his mother, so nice to meet you both. Izumi said as he shook their hands as he addressed them both before he pulled back and turned to the skinny blonde with a kindly smile. And it's good to see you again, All Might. Whoa, he knows about your secret? Midoriya asked, surprise, and the blonde laughed as he shook the doctor's hand. Dr. Izumi was one of the people who worked on my operation when my stomach was, well, you know. Kinda hard to keep it secret under those circumstances. The man explained and Midoriya nodded in understanding, while Inko took a seat and resumed her fidgeting. So what's going to happen, doctor? Right, well, if you could please come here and sit atop the bed, Midoriya. I'd like to first start with a checkup of your physical health. Izumi said as he patted the spot on the bed. After that we can discuss these transformations All Might has told me about. The checkup went by fairly quickly, only taking 10 minutes in total for the doctor to get the results he needed. When asked about whether he exercised, Midoriya answered honestly and tried not to flinch when he saw All Might's questioning glance when he got more into detail. Well, the results are interesting. Your body is suffering from being overworked, but it has nothing to do with the watch. These exercises you have been implementing on yourself, you need to stop them, otherwise they will be extremely detrimental to your health. Izumi warned, and Inko gasped lightly while All Might just looked at him with a disapproving glance which honestly hurt more than any of the exercises. As for the watch though, there's only one way to find out if it has any negative effects. Transform? Midoriya asked, and the man nodded his head, before gesturing to a door the boy had failed to notice before. That leads to the outside, where we'll be doing these experiments. Due to the immense size your first transformation apparently was, I don't want to risk another even bigger one showing up and destroying the ceiling. The blue-eyed man explained as he walked forward, and Midoriya followed him, All Might and his mother not too far behind. Once they were out in the open, Midoriya looked around and was surprised by just how much space they had available to them. I believe you should have figured out how to operate your watch yesterday, yes? Well, yeah, I figured out how it worked, but I ended up as the wrong alien. Fortunately, he's still timed out though. Alien? Oh, that's what I'm calling them for now, just cause it's easier than saying transformation. Well, okay then, aliens it is. An accidental transformation could be problematic, but we'll deal with that bridge when we come to it. The doctor waved the issue away as Midoriya brought up the watch face. Speaking of names, do you have any for the aliens so far? Being able to separate easily would make my job easier. Actually, I hadn't thought of any, but I guess there's no reason I can't name them now. Midoriya said as he stopped the watch's selection screen on his first transformation. I assume you want the original one I turned into? Preferably. Midoriya gently pressed down the plate and his body went numb as a green flash engulfed him. A second later, a towering brown dinosaur-like creature took his place, his size truly frightening to the two of the three who hadn't seen it yet. Oh my, that is quite the transformation. Izumi muttered with wide eyes before shaking his head and pulling out a pen. Tell me, aside from size, do you feel any different? Well, I feel stronger, but other than that, I'm just me. Midoriya said as he looked down at his massive fists. Actually, I don't feel tall at all, I feel pretty small for some reason. Well, that's certainly odd. The doctor muttered as he wrote down his notes. Is there anything you can do regarding your size that might be related to you feeling this way? Maybe? Hang on a second. The dinosaur closed his eyes and concentrated as he felt a weird sensation run throughout his body. Moments later, he felt his body stretch and grow as the world became smaller and smaller. Whoa! Now this is huge. Amazing. You must be surpassing at least 40 feet at that height. The black-haired assessor shouted up to the now massive boy. All Might barely had time to catch Inko when she fainted. In fact, you seem almost as big as the lady, and she is over 60 feet, this is quite impressive. Please shrink now if you can. Another few moments later and the massive alien was back down to his regular size, which still towered over the others easily. Holy, I had no idea he could do that. Yes, size enhancers are rare as well. I think I have what I need to know to set up a test for this alien, as you call, if there is no other abilities he may have. Izumi said, and Midoriya shook his head to indicate he didn't think there was any. Alright then. And like we were saying, do you want to name him now or later? Or would you rather just refer to them numerically? Well, actually I did have an idea for a name once I got so big. Midoriya admitted as he looked down at the doctor. What do you think of Colossus? Well, I certainly like it. The doctor encouraged with a smile before turning to the other two present. What do you both think? Inko just stared blankly forward. Colossus works. All Might added, with a hand on the woman's shoulder. Alright then, Colossus it is for transformation 1. The doctor said as he wrote it down in his notepad before wandering inside. When he came back out, he was dragging a tray with different materials like wood and steel. You said you felt stronger, let us see just how much stronger. I want you to punch each one of these, we'll see how many you can affect. We'll start with plastic and work our way up to our strongest metals. Ready? Ready. Sir, the Omnitrix has been activated multiple times in the past few Earth hours. Shall we send another drone? He defeated the last one? Yes, with a Kinecelerin transformation. Interesting, leave him be for now. Sir? I wish to see just what I'm dealing with. Alright Midoriya, I think there's just one more transformation in there but I don't think we'll have the time to look at him I'm afraid. Izumi said as he looked over his notes. They had returned inside and were now awaiting the results of the tests Midoriya had performed. I would like to do another checkup now to see if any of the transformations have affected you and then I will tell you how they performed. Fortunately said checkup was quicker than the first as they already had some of the stuff they needed. They were in for a surprise as the checkup was wrapping up though. Well, I'll be a donkey's grandfather. I don't want to think about how that would work. It would seem your transformations, if anything, are actually beneficial to your health. The doctor said as he looked over the results. It's possible you just got a little better from the fresh air but these results seem to indicate your transformations have actually helped make you healthier. What? How? Midoriya asked incredulous as his mother and mentor looked on, similarly shocked. I'm not fully sure but I would guess however the watch transforms you, when it brings you back to normal it puts you into what it considers to be your normal physical state. That's just a guess though mind you. The doctor said as he placed his clipboard to the side and turned around to face them all. Well anyways, I'm sure you'd like the results, though I'm sure you already have a good idea of where a lot of them stand. Colossus is the strongest? Midoriya asked, already knowing the answer from the many times he ended up hurting his hand as other aliens, as it turned out almost all of them had enhanced strength but most didn't come close to his massive dinosaur form. Yes, I'd say strong enough to give All Might a run for his money as he is now, though not necessarily prove stronger mind you. He is also one of the most durable. Your fastest is easily the one you decided to call Blink, he managed to clock 400 miles per hour from the tests and I believe you said you hadn't reached top speed. Your most durable was certainly the Slime and your smartest was Brainiac as you named him. I could list more feats but you were there, you know what you are actually capable of, at least somewhat. Your transformations all share the same time limit, 10 minutes, and after that, it takes 5 minutes to recharge. Though this seems to fluctuate because of unknown factors yet they only seem to decrease recharge time. So, it would seem that the watch has no negative effects on you. So as long as there is no outside factor calling for it, you needn't be in a rush to remove it. The doctor said and Midoriya let out a sigh of relief. I would suggest just treating it as a support item for now. As it is, I'd be as willing saying congratulations, you now effectively are no longer quirkless Midoriya. And that's when the boy fainted. A moment later he returned with everyone looking at him worriedly, though the doctor didn't rush to do anything, seeming to understand it was more from shock than any health issue. He did hand him a cup of water though. Drink, it helps. Thanks. Midoriya said as he stood up. Well, I believe that is everything. I'll schedule for an appointment next month, you should be fine though. The doctor said as the three made their way to the door. Nice to see you all, have a good day. Thank you. Same to you, thanks for helping. Midoriya said as the door closed and the three were left alone in the hall with this new information. The Greenette sighed as he turned to his mentor who had an unimpressed look on his face. Talk? All Might confirmed before looking up to his mother. Do you mind if the two of us do this alone for a moment? If you wish to stay that's fine, it's not to do with the watch though. If it's nothing to do with the watch then I suppose I can stay to the side for a moment but we need to talk about the watch as well and I want to be here for that. The woman said with a serious tone before she turned and made her way down the hall to a nearby vending machine, likely to get a snack. So, I guess you're pretty upset with me. Midoriya said as he turned to face his mentor. I am frustrated you didn't follow my plan yes but I'm more worried than anything. You heard what the doctor said, overworking your body won't do you any favors in getting stronger or making you able to wield one for all. All Might said and the boy flinched as he sat down. I'm sorry, it's just, I want to be a hero, so much, and the only way to do that is if I'm able to take on one for all. I thought if I could fit in more exercise I could get stronger faster. The boy looked down at his feet, hand gripping his pants and trembling. Exercising never was my strong suit. I guess that's showing now. Young man. All Might sighed, before walking forward and kneeling down, placing his hands on his successor's shoulders. I'm not mad, okay? To be completely honest, once upon a time I would have done the same thing probably, but it's bad for your health to overwork yourself like you have. It's fortunate we picked up on it early, it can be fixed with no major repercussions. Are you willing to follow the plan I give you this time? Without modifying it? Yes. I'll do whatever you say, I'll follow your plan properly. Midoriya exclaimed as he looked up, a determined gaze set on his features. Inko wondered back at that moment, and the two separated. As for it being the only way to become a hero, that's not true. All Might said, and both the Midoriyas turned to look at him. You heard it from the doctor himself that it's basically the equivalent of a support item, and you already made it pretty clear you're probably not taking off the watch even if we find a way to. So, we saw what you could do in those tests, even without one for all there might be a way for you to be a hero, and it's sitting on your wrist. Wait, you mean? Yeah, that watch might as well be your quirk for now. All Might said with a grin before looking up to the portly woman. Assuming it's alright with you, of course. On one condition I can accept that. The woman said firmly, as she walked up to them both and looked the blonde dead in the eyes. Keep my baby safe. I can't stand the thought anyone wants to hurt him, but if he refuses to take it off then I can't make him. He can be stubborn like that. So that patrol of pros you were talking about? Please set that up, and when he trains with you, which I won't stop, please just keep him safe. I promise I will. All Might said, and Midoriya jumped up as well, before pulling his mother into a hug. And I promise I'll try to stay out of trouble. Try being the key word though. He said, mostly jokingly, though no one objected as the woman held her son. A moment of tender silence passed until All Might spoke up. Well, this has proven much better than I could have hoped. I suppose I had better get to work on your new exercise plan, young man, both to make up for what was lost and make room for some training with that watch. While you have it, you would do best to learn how to use it. Yes, sir. Midoriya agreed as he pulled away before his eyes widened as if he remembered something, before turning and knocking on the doctor's door. A moment later the man looked out with a confused stare before noticing the boy. Yes, did you forget something? I forgot to ask for the names I used. I wanted to write them down for my own notebooks. Midoriya explained, and the doctor's mouth perked up into a kind smile. Ah, just give me a moment, he said before walking back into the room. The sound of a scratching pencil could be heard before he showed up again with a loose piece of paper in hand which he gave to the teen. Here you go. Have a good day. Midoriya thanked him and bowed, and once the door was closed turned to join his mom and mentor. Okay, we should probably go now. Don't want to miss the train. As they walked, a smile passed the smallest of the three's face as he looked at the list. Colossus Blink Crystallize Reverb Chiller Goop Brainiac Enhance Pyroform. Yeah, he was fine with these. It had been 3 months since Midoriya had been blessed with the discovery of the device that was the Omnitrix, and he had used the time well to get more used to the watch. That hardly meant he understood it though. In that time he'd learnt only 2 things about his watch. It had a randomizer function. Whenever enough force was applied to the dial, he would end up as a random alien that wasn't who he picked. That wasn't a problem, in fact it was quite fun, as the boy used the feature a lot in his house during the first month of having it, to take notes and learn more about his aliens. A part of him had to wonder if his own thoughts influenced the random selection, as he quite commonly ended up as Blink, his blue speed demon, or rather alien. So maybe he kind of had a favorite, but he had a soft spot for all his aliens, going as far as to rearrange his room to have small sections for each alien who wasn't Colossus, who barely fit in the room at all whenever he did show up. Still, after the 10th alien incident when he and All Might had been training at Dagobah, he had stopped the randomizer indoors if he could help it. Speaking of, ever since he had obtained the Omnitrix, the training seemed to have relaxed a little. While he was still being worked to the bone to get the beach cleaned up, He had stopped overworking himself and could see the difference from how he felt before, the results of the training seeming much greater than before. Well, he ached less at least. Occasionally, All Might would let the boy use Colossus or an alien-made PF solid blue crystal he had taken to calling Crystallize, to get used to his alien forms. However, he had explicitly banned him from using Blink due to the alien being cheating, as the blonde had put it. Rarely, very rarely, the blonde wouldn't ask the boy to clear up more of the beach but instead go to one of the already finished areas to test his aliens further. He had set an entire notebook aside for them, though this one was set in a code only he could read. He hadn't shared it with All Might or his mom to keep it as secure as possible. Occasionally he would flip through it just to remind himself this was real. He had the equivalent of a quirk now, or really the equivalent of a bunch of quirks in one. He was reading the third page of that book now, on the one alien who he had mixed feelings on. Goop. A good offense and defensive alien. He is made of a green slime-like substance or a goop, hence the name. He comes with some form of gravity device that allows him to take on a humanoid shape. When deactivated, he turns into a slime. He cannot move, so defending said device ID important. Due to his odd form, he is nigh indestructible to most forms of physical attacks, similarly to the slime villain who once attacked me in Kakken. However, Goop has an advantage with his device. So long as it is active, he can reform at will. Also, unlike the slime villain, Goop can change the form of his body to resemble acids and adhesives. I have yet to find a material strong enough to withstand the corrosive form of Goop. It would be obvious to anyone if they read the page of notes that the alien had to be one of the best in the boy's arsenal due to his ability to take nearly any kind of damage, but due to his similarities to the villain that had attacked him once upon Q time, the alien always left a sour taste in the boy's mouth afterwards. Izuku. Dinner. I need some help with the usual. Coming. Closing the book and setting it away in a hidden zero art of his desk, he stood up and pulled up the selection dial on his watch, scrolling till he found what he wanted. There you are. If my food's too hot, then I'll need it to be a little chiller. Yeah, puns were not his area of expertise. Nevertheless, he activated the watch, pressing it down as gently as he could and being engulfed in a flash of green. Seconds later, where the greenette stood was now a blue humanoid moth standing 6 foot tall with his wings wrapped around him like a cloak. Cool. He said in a whispery voice that drawled on, a cold breath of air blowing out before he started to turn transparent, only a faint outline visible of him, and he passed right through his wall eye to the kitchen. I'm here. Ah. Inko shouted out in surprise as she turned to see the humanoid moth form back into existence. Placing a hand over her chest, the woman shook her head. Sweetie, I'm happy you have a power of your own now, but you know chiller scares me. The woman complained as she turned to face him, slightly unnerved. It doesn't help when you appear out of nowhere. Please just use the doors. Sorry. He apologized as he walked up to the stove, an old one that had become faulty in recent years. They had no money to afford a new one though. A quick inhale before the teen blew across the top of the fire, a harsh cold wind traveling through and immediately extinguishing the fire. Near the back, some small pieces of ice started to form when the boy stopped blowing. I'll turn back now. The second thing he had learnt about his watch was that he didn't have to stay alien for as long as the watch wanted if he tapped the watch symbol on his alien forms a couple times. On Chiller, it was located on his chest, making it easy to reach. Once the familiar rhythm of 3 taps were played against the hourglass symbol of the Omnitrix, another flash occurred and once more Izuku Midoriya was standing there. Turning to join his mother at the kitchen, his thoughts turned to the watch itself and not the aliens within. Sometimes he wondered if it was aware. It was an odd thing to think perhaps, but ever since he had first returned to school he'd experienced something odd that had him pondering if it was even possible. Midoriya took a deep breath as he walked the halls to his class, ignoring the pointing and stares he received like always. Most were making fun of him for being the weirdo with no quirk, and he was used to it, so it was easy to tune out. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be as easy when he entered his class, where someone would inevitably notice the Omnitrix. He and All Might had gotten it registered as a special support item for him, acting in place of a quirk. He was still registered as quirkless, but as he understood it, there was now a note about his watch next to register. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door to class and did his best to ignore the jeers and taunts that came as soon as they realized who it was. Bakugo, his blonde childhood friend Kaken, growled as he walked past but said nothing. The teacher arrived soon after. Unfortunately, the first 2 periods passed with only being occasionally openly mocked or hit with spitballs and hard-to-see quirks. A pettier part of him was honestly kind of excited about when they'd find out about the Omnitrix and they could no longer hold his lack of powers over him. He had no doubt they'd try, but he was prepared, for once. It turned out to be their first break period when they finally tried to move to more openly attack Midoriya now that no teacher was present. Unsurprisingly to the greenette, it ended up being the usual suspects who wandered up to him with their malicious grins and eyes reflecting their ill intent. "Hey, Deku," one said with forced joviality, and the boy openly rolled his eyes. While he was certainly still super uncomfortable with the scenario he was in and didn't want to deal with it at all, he at least now could fight back if he needed, and something about that knowledge made him feel a lot better in himself. He wasn't going to keep being a stepping stone for the people in this class. "What?" he asked with a short tone, surprising even himself when he didn't stutter or stumble. The boy looked insulted and leaned over the desk to the greenette. "Where do you get off talking like that?" he asked with barely concealed anger, his fist turning into a rock-like substance, and the greenette noticed Bakugo had turned to watch the interaction with new interest. Midoriya sighed as the rock quirk boy glared down at him. He had already been one of the worst aside from Bakugo, being one of the few willing to attack Midoriya without anyone telling him to. "Everyone in this room is your betters, you quirkless snowtrag, you would do well to remember that." Midoriya didn't bother responding, hand already placed atop his watch prepared to transform into Colossus if need be, but instead he moved his hand away while saying a single phrase that he would make sure to find the rest of his last few months here. "You're not even worth it." "Excuse me? We are all more dash." Midoriya didn't bother to listen as he stood up, showing the boy his watch. "Got powers and I don't?" "I know, but this changes that." "A stupid watch?" "My stupid watch," Midoriya said as he flipped the dial open and slid along a couple aliens, before pressing down the face as most of the class looked in bewilderment. A familiar flash appeared, and a second later the blue velociraptor-like form of Blink was before them all, causing Bakugo to jump out of his seat in surprise. "Is a little more than just a watch." "Deku, the fuck?" he questioned, yet for once he seemed to be missing his hostility in absolute bewilderment. Most of the rest of the class held similar surprise, and a smirk passed the speedster's face, though it was hidden by his visor. "Okay, still doesn't make you any better than us," the rock quirk wielder said as he threw a punch at the boy, but quickly found himself falling forward when he missed, the transformed teen now behind him with his arm crossed. "Damn it, you have no right to think that just because you got some fancy watch thing, you're better. You're still a quirkless loser." "Maybe. But I'm one who could take you for the most terrifying joyride of your life," Blink threatened as he walked forward. "But what makes me better than you?" 3 rhythmic taps against the symbol on his chest, and Izuku Midoriya stood there once more, looking more confident and more annoyed than most of them had ever seen. "I had actual reason to, but I didn't. It's called restraint." With that he had planned to return to his seat, feeling much better about himself than he had in years, topped only perhaps by the moment All Might told him he could be a hero. However, he couldn't return to his seat for a reason he really should have foreseen. Before he could take his seat, he was suddenly grabbed and thrown against the black wall, the familiar heat and bang of an explosion sounding out. "Deku!" The unmistakable growl of Bakugo came as the blonde pinned him against the wall, another explosion threatening to go off on him. "Give me that damn watch. And no Kaken." Boom. "Give me it, you worthless nerd, a bastard like you doesn't deserve it." The explosive teen threatened, his anger rising, and maybe it was just the explosion disorienting him, but it seemed like was actually being cheered on by the class. In another timeline, maybe Deku would have shyly admitted he couldn't and took whatever punishment the blonde gave. Maybe in another he even knew how and did. But not in this one. In this one Deku wasn't feeling shy, though an underlying fear implanted since his childhood with the blonde was prevalent. Midoriya had one thought in his head. No more. He wasn't the same quaking, quirkless Deku he was just months prior. He had become the #1 hero's imminent successor, he had powers now, lots of them, and he had taken on an actual villain, alone, and had won. He refused to be a victim, not anymore. As if sensing the confrontation, the Omnitrix beeped when Midoriya grabbed his childhood friend's arm. Neither noticed the increasingly bright shine from the watch. "No more Kaken, I'm not powerless anymore and I'm not your plaything anymore." He still shook, he was still scared. But he was also tired, and had enough. Bakugo seemed to not like that answer as he moved to set off another explosion, but before he could. Beep. Boom. A massive flash of green light occurred and Midoriya actually felt the force of the shockwave throughout his body, yet he didn't transform. When he opened his eyes, Bakugo was on the floor across the room, everyone looking on in shock. When the blonde started to stir, Midoriya set his hand on the watch, prepared to transform, but the blonde made no move to attack again as the bell rang, signaling the break had ended. But Midoriya saw it in his eyes, the blonde would want to kill him for this. And yet, finally, in the first time in forever, Midoriya spent the rest of the day without anyone even daring look at him wrong. The months continued to pass, seemingly in no time at all, and soon enough they were in the final month of training, the final day. The entrance exam was taking place later that day and Midoriya was riding on a high. He hadn't been bullied in months. Bakugo, while he still threw the occasional insult or snide glance, hadn't tried to take his watch again, and there had been no incidents with whoever sent that robot so long ago. On top of it all, with minutes to spare, he had cleared the last of Dagoba Municipal Beach of the trash surrounding it without once relying on his alien forms. He stood upon the final mound of trash to be cleated away as he looked out towards the rising sun. "Goodness!" he heard his mentor's voice announce in surprise, signaling he had finally arrived, and Midoriya smirked. "Did it?" And with that thought his legs gave out and he plummeted off the side of the trash heap before being caught up in his mentor's hands. "Young Midoriya, you never cease to amaze." "I finished it, all, without using the Omnitrix," the boy said as tried to catch his breath, being set back on his feet by the hulking blonde. "Excellent work. Truly, you are an amazing choice to be the next bearer of One for All, if I do say so myself." "All Might," Midoriya muttered before looking up at the blonde with a frown, a question dancing through his mind. "Is REM months really enough? For so much power? Honestly? Only to not die. Using it might be a different story when it comes to hurting you, though, I'm afraid." All Might admitted with a quirked brow. "Why do you ask?" "Don't get me wrong, of course I want One for All, but if my body needs more time." The boy turned his gaze to his mentor and held up his wrist with the Omnitrix attached. "Do you think I'd be able to, and allowed, to use the Omnitrix?" "I had a feeling you'd ask," the pro admitted as he transformed back into his regular form. "I checked myself, support items are allowed for people who need them, and seeing as you're down as quirkless, I'd say you definitely qualify." "You're sure about this?" "Yeah, don't think I'm not ungrateful or anything, really I am so thankful for all of this, but, if the power is still too much, I'd rather train more to be ready for it. Not to mention, I'm probably going to rely on the Omnitrix anyways, seeing as I'm more used to it." All Might sighed before a smile spread on his face and he turned to walk away, gesturing for the boy to follow. "It's your choice, kid. If you want to wait, we'll wait. Hope this whole exercise still gave you some good help for when you can't go alien though." "You're absolutely certain?" "Definitely." "Well then, let's go see if UA ever prepared for an alien invasion."
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.